In this video, we will focus specifically on the header of our integration card, and we learn how to improve its overall look and feel. Now, in the earlier videos, we had seen how to create a UI5 integration card and then how to package it into a content package and finally deploy it to your business work site that was built by using the build work zone. We had also incorporated the card into an already existing page. The role was assigned to our business site and finally to our user ID in the sub account as well. And at the moment, this is how our card looks like. This section at the top that you see, this is the header of our card, and this is what we are going to go ahead and improve in this particular video. So let's take a quick look at the manifest.json as it stands currently. At the moment, we have added in 3 namespaces into our manifest. That's the sap.app, the sap.ui, and the sap.card. And the attributes from these namespaces have been set. If we open the sap.card namespace, under that we have the header attribute, and under the header, I have set the 2 of the attributes, the title and the subtitle. Now, there are basically 2 types of headers that you can have for a UI5 integration card. There is a default header and then there is a numeric header. And the major difference between the two is that the numeric header allows you to include numeric information in the header, such as a KPI information or a summary number in the header. Now, what we have over here, the thing that we have built, this is a default header. If in your business case, you have some sort of a numeric KPI that you want to immediately draw the attention of the user to, then it's a good idea to use a numeric header instead of a default header like what we have right now. Now we are going to see how to convert our default header that we have set up into a numeric header. So the first thing that we need to do, how do I inform the framework that my header is a numeric header? So for that, under the attribute header, so let me just close this over here. So under the attribute header, we'll add in a new attribute, which is called as type, and we'll set its value to numeric. So with a capital N, and let's not forget the comma here. So this is how we define our header to be of type numeric. The next thing I'll do is I'll adjust the title of this card to better reflect what the aim of this card is. Now this card, which we have built over here, this is meant to show how many invoices are still in the pending open state. So a better title for this card might be something like outstanding invoices. And for the subtitle, let's change it to by numbers. Now, if you want to highlight a certain unit of measure or a certain currency, for that, we have an attribute on the header called as the unit of measurement. Now, in this card, for each of the item, we are displaying a money amount. So I'll use my currency as the unit of measurement, which is the EUR. So let's add that in. So let's put in a comma, and then we say unit of measurement, and its value is going to be EUR. So now you see how this particular information, the unit of measurement or the currency that you have specified by this attribute, it gets incorporated into your header over here, and it gives a vital piece of information to the user. Now you can put in 2 kinds of numeric indicators in your numeric header, or we can say there are 2 types of KPIs that can be added into your card header. The first one is the main indicator. Now, the main indicator is the numeric value that will be highlighted the most in your card header. So you must always think about what this KPI is going to be. In my case, this card is listing out open invoices, so invoices that are pending payment. So I'll say the most important KPI that I want to highlight to the user is the total number of open invoices that I have. All right. So this is what I'm going to do. Now, broadly speaking, the main indicator is going to be set up like this. We say main indicator. This is going to be a structured JSON attribute. We put in a number. So this is going to be your actual KPI. After this, we have what is called as the unit. Let's put in kgs for now. Then we have the trend. This can be either up or down. And finally, we have then the state. For now, let's set it to critical. Let's not forget the C should of course be capital. So this is how your main indicator will finally look like once it has been incorporated into your card header. This is the number, the numeric value. This is the unit of measure that is linked to this particular number. The trend can be up or down depending on whether it's a good situation or a bad situation. And then of course you have the color which represents the state, right? So if the state is critical, you can have it as red, and if it is green, then it's all good in that sense. That's what state represents. Now I have used static data to represent the main indicator over here. Now, of course, we don't want to use static data. We want the actual data from the OData service itself. So let's now think about how we can retrieve the invoice count from the OData service itself, right? So my main indicator is going to be the total invoice count, and we are now going to see how we can replace this static data by the invoice count from the service itself. Now, if you collapse all your sections in the manifest.json file, you will notice that under the sap.card namespace, we had three attributes: the header, the content, and the configuration. And then under content, we had a data section, and this data had contained the request. So this is the OData request that is going to be sent to retrieve the actual data, and the results were then available in the response under the path /d/results. This data section over here, this is supplying data for the contents of this particular item. The header section over here, so that's the section right above the content, it can have its own data section. So I'm going to use a different URI to retrieve data for my header. So I don't want to use the same data request that was used for this content. I'm going to set up a data section for the header separately. So let's put that in. I'll say data, the curly braces, then the request that should be sent, the URL for this request. In this, we first specify the name of the destination that we had created earlier. This was destinations.northwind. Now, if you remember, this was a destination that we had set up in the last video under destinations northwind, and then the name of the destination configured in the BTP sub account and the default URL for that particular destination. After that, I'll put in the full name of the service. And then we want the total number of open invoices. So I'll use the OData specification called as $count. So this is how the URL for this particular data request is going to look like. Now let's think a little bit about the path of the results for this particular count URL that we have specified. When we were calling the invoice services to retrieve the data for the list items, in the OData response, there was a JSON attribute called as D, and then within D, we had something called as results. And then under that particular results were my individual invoice items, right? So that's why when I was specifying the path of the results in the response, I had specified the path as /t/results. But in the case of the header data request, when I use the same URL, but this time with the count specification at the end, because I want the total invoice count, I can see that the response does not contain any nested structure and the count is sent as is. So this time when we specify the path of the results, we will simply put in two curly braces, which indicates that the result is going to be in the root itself. So this is how we set up the data request for the header. And let's not forget the comma here. So now that we have the data request, the next thing that we are going to do is incorporate the result of this data request in my main indicator. In the main indicator, under number, I want to see the result of this particular OData service. And we just saw that the response of this request does not have a JSON. So there is no attribute name like we had for the item, and we just want the content. So in that case, I'll just put in two braces like this. And now if you see the preview, the count number that is being returned, this is being displayed as the main indicator over here. The next thing that we need to think about is the unit. This one over here. This, as we had seen earlier, is a piece of text that appears right next to the KPI. And if my main indicator, this over here, if this was a weight, for example, I would have used kilograms, or if it was a currency amount, I would have used EUR or dollars, for example. But this is a count in my case. So I'm just simply going to say invoices. Now let's look at the trend. Now in my business case, the number of pending open invoices should always be less than 2000. All right, so this is my cutoff, just as an example. So if this count that is being returned by the data request, if it is more than 2000, or in business terms, we say that we have more than 2000 pending invoices, then that's a bad thing, right? So my trend is down, descending. And if it is less than 2000 pending invoices, then that's a good thing, right? Then my trend is up, ascending. So the way we set this up is we are going to be using a condition in which we will evaluate the value that is being returned by this data request. So the way we do that, we put in the braces and then the is equal to sign. We want to evaluate the result of the data request call, which, as we have seen, is present in the root itself. So we say dollar and then the path of the result. We want to check if this value is lesser than 2000 or not. So we write in the condition lesser than 2000 and then we put in a question mark. If this condition is true, so this means that if the open invoice count is less than 2000, then the value which should be assigned to trend is up. And if this condition is false, then the value which should be assigned to trend is down. In a very similar fashion, by using this particular conditional formatting approach, let's go ahead and set up the state field. So we say evaluate the same invoice count. If it is less than 2000, in that case, we set the state to good. If not, it's critical. So this is how your main indicator KPI can be set up in the numeric header. This number is being retrieved from an OData service, and by using conditional formatting, I am deciding how to set the values of the trend and the state. The next thing that we are going to look at is the side indicator. So this was the main indicator, and now we are going to look at what is called as the side indicator. The side indicator is going to appear right next to the main indicator. It's going to be shown in a smaller font than the main indicator. So it can be used for other KPIs which are probably not so important for the business user. I am going to use the side indicator to inform the user of the cutoff. So my cutoff right now is 2000, but the user does not know of this cutoff, this 2000 cutoff. So I'm going to use side indicator to inform him of this particular cutoff. So I'll say side indicators. Now there can be more than one side indicator up to a maximum of two. So which is why here we have an array. So therefore I'm using the square brackets to indicate an array. And then the first element of this particular array is a structure, and so therefore the curly braces here. Then I put in a title, then the number, which is in this case fixed at 2000, a state, which would be good, and then finally the unit, which I will again set as invoices. Now I'll go ahead and put in my second side indicator. This one is going to be called as a deviation. Here I want to show how much deviation exists at the moment. And when I say deviation, I mean the difference that exists between the cutoff value of 2000 and the actual open invoice count that was retrieved from the OData service. So for the number, again, this is going to be a value. So I put in the braces with is equal to sign. Now this is going to be, as I said, the actual invoice count. So which is dollar and then the braces minus the cutoff, which is 2000. And then we close it off. So now you can see that the number for this particular side indicator deviation is being calculated as the response returned from this particular OData service. So that's the total count minus the cutoff 2000. So which is what gives us, so 2155 minus 2000 is how you're getting this deviation over here. And now for the state of this KPI, this is how I'll set it up. This is a value. So let's put in the braces and the is equal to sign. I'll say calculate the difference between the total invoice count and the cutoff of 2000. If this is greater than 0, so in this case, I have a positive deviation, which is bad. This means that there are more pending invoices. So in that case, it should be displayed as critical. If not, then we can display it as good. So at the moment we have a positive deviation. The number of pending invoices is more than the cutoff of 2000, which is why this is being indicated in red. So now the user sees these two side indicators right next to the main indicator, and he knows his target is 2000 invoices. Dependency target is 2000 invoices. And he has these many open invoices, which is more than this particular target, which is why there is a deviation of 155 being shown as critical. The next improvement that we are going to do, and this is not directly related to the header of the card, but we'll do it anyways. So right now our card, it doesn't really look like a card. Yes, it looks more like a list. So there are a number of items being returned. I'm going to limit the number of records that are actually displayed on the list. So the number of content items that are displayed in the list card is of course an attribute that is related to content of your card, right? So let's locate the content attribute. Right after item, let's put in the attribute called as max items and set its value to 5. The preview reflects the change, and as you can see, then it retrieves only 5 records at a time. Now this is more appropriate as a card, and it looks smarter in your business site. The next thing that we are going to do is we are going to add a header in our logo over here. Now I'm going to show you two different ways in which this can be done. So first of all, let's create a folder under our root called as images. And then under this folder, upload the file, the image file that you would like to use as an icon. Now scroll to your header attribute, and then within this header attribute, let's specify the attribute called as the icon. Under icon, we need to specify the source of the image. I'm going to specify the path of the image that is going to be used as the source. We have the root folder, then the images folder, and finally the name of the file. Now you can see the image that you had uploaded and placed here is being used as an icon in the header. Now this is one way of displaying an icon in your header by using a custom image. The other way is that you could just use one of the standard SAP icons, and you will most probably find one that fits your case. Like in our case, we are trying to show pending invoices, so therefore we have this name of the icon called as pending, and that does the task. Now the last thing that we are going to add in our application is something called as the status. Now the status is a piece of text that appears at the top right of your header, and it is like a piece of text which can be used for different purposes. For example, if your application is not productive and it's still a beta version of your application, so I could use the status field to point that out. So we could say beta version, and this will then appear to your business user like this. This text can also make use of the data that is being returned by the data request in the header. So for example, if I want to use the text field to display the number of records, I could simply say 5 of, and then the data returned by the OData service, which is which can be represented by these curly braces. So now you see the status message being shown as 5 because 5 records are displayed, and then 5 of 2155 because 2155 is the total number of records that exist actually in this particular list. So now if you deploy this updated card back into your business site, you can see the new header that you have set up, and this is how it looks like. You can see the main KPI indicator that is being shown, and next to that are your two side indicators, the icon that we had incorporated, the unit of measure, and the trend and the state are all being calculated based on what is being returned by the OData service. And here we have then the status, of course. So this is how we go about setting up a numeric header for our UI5 integration card. The key takeaway here should be really how we go about defining and setting up the main indicator and the side indicators along with the trend and the state of these indicators. If you found the content of this video useful, please do consider subscribing to the channel or dropping a like for this video. In the next video, we'll continue exploring the interesting topic of the SAP frameworks. So until then, take care and